You're listening to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon, presented by 92.9 Tom FM, an iHeart radio station.
What's up? Welcome to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon. I am Kyle McMahon, and this is episode number 31. Woo! So, as always, we have been growing every single week, and it is all because of you. I really can't thank you enough for your sharing each episode. You're, talking about the show on social media, and you're following us and emailing me and tweeting me, and all. You guys are just growing the show, and I love you for it. Thank you so much. So this is another all-interview episode. We got two huge interviews that I'm really excited about. First up, I am talking to Liza Wyles, who is the executive producer of Marvel's Hero Project. So if you haven't seen this show yet on Disney+, you have got to. It is so incredible. It's so heartwarming. And what it is they, spotlight a child that is doing amazing, incredible work in their community. And they shine a light on them and treat them like the superhero that they are. And then the Marvel artists go and make an actual comic book about them being a superhero. I'm telling you, the show is awesome. So here is my interview with her on Marvel's Hero Project. I am with Liza Wyles, executive producer of Marvel's Hero Project, streaming exclusively on Disney Plus starting November 12th. Thank you so much for talking with me, Liza.
Sure, happy to.
First of all, I got to say, I am so excited for Disney Plus. It's kind of ridiculous how excited I am. And I'm really looking forward to Marvel's Hero Project. So you're the executive producer of the show. Tell me a little bit from your side, what we can expect.
Sure. So Marvel's first original non-scripted series is the show. There's a lot of excitement around that, and we had set out to find these amazing kids who are doing really remarkable things in their communities, very locally, towards positive change, and we wanted to tell their stories the way only Marvel could, and that included turning them into superheroes in their very own comic book, which they don't know is happening, and we surprise them with at the end of the episode, and it's kind of a moment.
Yeah. So I watched the first episode, and wow, I mean, it's like all the feels. It's like a roller coaster. You know what I mean? You have the excitement of all this great work that these kids are doing, and then you have, they are superheroes in their own communities, and then they get turned into superheroes in comic form by Marvel of all places. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah, we knew it was a way that we could really celebrate them and recognize them as the real life heroes that they are. Because again, we're not so much turning them into heroes; we're recognizing them as the superheroes that they are in real life, and mostly because they don't expect anything in return. These kids are doing it because they want to, altruistically. They saw a need locally in their community or nearby, and thought about what they themselves could do to enact positive change, and then went and did it, and enlisted the help they needed, and galvanized others to join the cause. So they're not out for any personal gain. They're just wanting to make the world a nicer, safer, kinder place.
And I love that Marvel's Hero Project does that. Like, it shines a light, really showcases them as you said, as the heroes that they are. Where did the concept come from?
I think the very beginnings of the idea came from one of the executives whose own child posed the question, what if a superhero was a kid? What if there was a kid superhero? And then it kind of launched the discussion of, well, there are kids out in the real world doing heroic things, and let's find a way to tell their stories, because they very much align with the kinds of stories and character attributes that are already part of the Marvel Universe.
Absolutely. And how did you choose which kids to showcase?
So our goal was to make sure that we represented all areas of the country, different folks, different socioeconomic backgrounds, all different walks of life, that we had a really healthy cross-section and fair representation of all the different kinds of kids who are doing all the different kinds of good stuff in the world across many different causes. And we wanted to make sure we showed that it's anyone and truly any person, and not just from a certain kind of community or family or anything like that.
I love that. I love the inclusivity that, really all of Marvel and Disney embrace, you know what I mean? And I love how that's reflected in Marvel's Hero Project. So did you scour the news for stories for kids, to find them, or what was the process like?
Yes, for the most part. We worked with our production company who produced the show with us, did a ton of research for kids who were maybe already in the news, like, oh, maybe I heard this story about this one, but then also drilled down into the very kind of local community newspapers and, what's going on at a very much more micro level to find kids who are making those changes very close to home and of having a real positive effect on those around them, because it spreads, right? You have to start somewhere, and their actions were so big, even if their communities were small. So it was a process, and we also wanted to make sure we were representing a lot of different kinds of good work and causes to show that there are all kinds of things we could all be doing as human beings to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. And I feel like we need more of that, in today's society. We need more of that positivity and that inspiration. I mean, I got done watching and I'm like, well, dang, what am I going to do? You know what I mean?
Oh, I know.
I'm like, what have I done with my life?
Well, that's just, yep. What am I doing with my life? Right, exactly. It's actually a really wonderful wake-up call in that way. I don't think people will necessarily feel bad about themselves if they're not doing enough, but they can recognize, it all started from a few basic emails or actions or reaching out or just, a couple of hours a month and then a week, and then, it grew into something that just became part of that person's identity. Well, this is what I do now, and I love it, and I'm making a positive change, and I'm bringing other people on board, and I'm spreading it. It's a growing the good.
Yeah, absolutely. And were there any situations, as you were filming, that you found yourself surprised about? Like maybe it was even bigger than you thought once you, started shooting or anything?
I think I was surprised less as a producer, but more as a parent. That I was surprised at what these kids could do if you gave them the space to do it. I was really in awe, quite frankly, of the parents. Shout out to these kids' parents, man, and their caregivers and those adults who are around them and supporting them and saying, okay, you got big dreams? Well, all right, well, let's figure it out together. Let me support you. And doing whatever they could do within their, sometimes it was not a lot in terms of finances, but in terms of time and support and just positive feedback. It just made me realize how capable young people are if they're given the space to grow and reach a big goal that they have put out for themselves.
Right. Yeah. It's once, I think a lot of times all we hear so much is how, the younger generation, but when we empower people and like you said, they're given a safe space to grow these amazing ideas that could change the world can be changed.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line of every episode, is that things change for the better because of what these kids committed to do with their time.
So do you plan to follow up with any of these kids, like in future seasons or on social or anything? Because I would love to know, in a year, where does he go from here?
Oh, I would love to know that too. I mean, personally, yes, I would love to be voting for some of these kids one day, vote them in office. I'd be very excited about that. From a production standpoint, we don't have any concrete plans right now, but we're just curious to see where they go, like any other audience member, and then if there's more story to tell at some point, we hope we get to tell it.
That's awesome. And then on the comic side, because you do kind of, as you mentioned, you encapsulate them as the superheroes they are in comic book form. Where did that fit in with Marvel? So, I mean, obviously it goes hand in hand, but it's such a cool idea that, is so unique. How did that develop?
It was a really exciting process, to be honest. I've never worked on a show where you make a book at the same time based on the episode. That's kind of cool. And I have to say, it was just wonderful to work with the Marvel editing team, the editors, the art teams, the artists, and the writers. Who, when we would work with the production company and the producers of the show, who would tell us about the kids, and we would listen. Like, okay, well, what's their favorite color? Who are their own personal heroes? And when we would be able to drop in these little personal touches into their comic book, so when they opened it up, they're like, oh, wait, that's a unicorn, and I love unicorn. Oh, that's my mom. It was kind of an amazing experience, while also creating those elements that we all love in comics, and it's the triumph, it's conflict, it's good triumphing, and it's coming up with power sets. What does it look like? What is this kid's real life empathy? How does that look like? How do we illustrate that as a superpower, for example? Those are fun challenges to take on, a new wrinkle in producing a TV show, but I love that part of it.
Awesome. Liza Wyles, executive producer of Marvel's Hero Project, which as I said, I can't talk about this enough, is streaming exclusively on Disney Plus starting November 12th, and it'll be new episodes streaming every Friday, right?
That's right.
I cannot wait. Thank you.
And can I just add on that every time the episode, so with every new episode, the day the episode premieres, you could also go online and read the comic book of that episode.
And that's on Marvel Unlimited, right?
Marvel Unlimited or marvel.com/Hero Project. Basically, anywhere you read comics online, they'll be available for free.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much for talking with me, Liza. I really, really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see the rest of the season.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Isn't she awesome? I love her. I love this show. It's on Disney Plus right now, and we're going to have an all Disney Plus episode. Probably, I think it's next week. I have to look at the schedule. But there's so much good stuff on Disney Plus, and Marvel's Hero Project is just one of the amazing things on Disney Plus. So, my next interview is Michael Stevens, who you may know as VSauce on YouTube. 1.5 billion with a B, billion with the B, 1.5 billion views on his videos. He has 14.5 million subscribers on his YouTube channel. So I talked to him about his YouTube original show, Minefield. In particular, the episode, What is the Scariest Thing? So I had played the interview on my radio show around Halloween, and now you get the full uncut interview. And here is my interview with Michael Stevens, VSauce. So I am here with Michael Stevens, creator of the YouTube channel VSauce, which has over 1.65 billion views and over 14 million subscribers. I love the VSauce channel. I think it's an incredible channel. It has documentary style educational videos that are extremely informative and entertaining, and a lot of it focuses on the brain. So I can't wait to talk to you, Michael. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Great to be here. Thank you. So your YouTube original show, Minefield, started in 2017. How did that come about?
It came about because I always loved psychology. That's really what my background is in. My actual degrees are in psychology. But I remember in high school, a psychology teacher showing Candid Camera episodes to teach us about human behavior. And they were really funny. And I said, man, someone needs to combine the funniness of Candid Camera with a teacher and make a show out of it. And that's what Minefield became. So now we've done 3 seasons, and for Halloween this year, a big special about what is fear and is there such a thing as the scariest thing possible?
Yes, so I watched the special, What is the Scariest Thing, and I absolutely loved it. It does such a great job of combining, the educational aspect with a spooky element with something that, is really innate in all of us as humans. So I love the special.
Well, thank you.
Of course. And so in your special, What is the Scariest Thing, you did an experiment with Caltech, and what it was essentially was the appearance of an everyday shape, which was a purple square, when combined with a little bit of shock, literally, actually made you essentially afraid of that shape, of that square. Do you think it's possible to reverse engineer this? Like, for instance, if you have a bad experience on a flight, can you use that same logic to free you from your fear of flying if you reverse engineer that?
100%. In fact, that's what the researchers at Caltech are really doing. They're helping learn how fears are developed so that we can cure fears or help people deal with their fears through exposure therapy predominantly. So if you do the reverse of exposure therapy, where you pair a stimuli like a purple square with something dangerous and bad, like being electrically shocked, you can make the person scared of it. But if you're exposed to something you're afraid of, like an elevator, and it's always fine, and it's kind of boring, eventually you'll be less afraid of them. So the reverse does work, and it's much more humane.
And and what was that like for you to actually be literally shocked? Look at what did the results surprise you?
The results didn't surprise me. I mean, it seems like on the face of it very obvious. Of course, if I'm electrically shocked and screamed at every time a screen shows a specific kind of geometric shape, I will start to hate that shape. However, the surprising thing was how involuntary it is and how quickly it becomes involuntary before I'm even really sure which shape it is that is connected or what features of the shape is connected to being shocked. My skin conductance and the muscle twitching around my eye can already show that my brain is learning what to be afraid of. We also showed that you can learn fears secondhand. We had a friend of mine watch the whole experiment, and then later on she was told that she was going to be run through it as well, but she was not shocked or screamed at or anything, but she still exhibited the same fear of the same shape. So she learned it just by watching.
Wow. That's really, really interesting, and it says a lot about us psychology, a lot about our psychology in regards to how fear is transmitted, which you actually talk about in the special, social fear transmission. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. I think it makes a lot of sense for us to learn fears in lots of different ways, one of which being, socially learning them by either hearing stories or witnessing things. If we didn't, then we wouldn't learn from other people's mistakes.
Right.
And, being told a scary story when you're a kid around a campfire is all part of some grand, evolutionary purpose we have to protect ourselves and to learn what it's like to be scared, so that we're prepared for real threats later. But we need to feel scared in a safe environment, whether it's a horror movie or even skydiving, something where we can flex that fear muscle but not actually put ourselves at too much of a risk.
Which is interesting that you say that, particularly with the safe environment, because you bring up the gentleman, the free solo gentleman, which he's kind of doing that, but in a not safe environment, which is very, very interesting to me. how, somebody can willingly do something like that would terrify, I think, most of us.
Yep.
But I don't know if it's like an adrenaline thing. What do you think, those people that seek out that?
Oh, well, it takes all kinds to make a society, and people like him have different amygdalas. I mean, we know this. I think in the documentary, the famous one about him, they look at his amygdala, and it's different. So some people, have a much higher tolerance for fear and adrenaline than others. But I think that's important and good. If you think you're a scaredy cat, as long as it's not making your life worse, that's good. Society needs some cautious people, but it also needs some brave, maybe even foolhardy people every once in a while.
And actually, I love that you say that. Do you think that's an evolutionary thing, or is it more of a thing that allows us to have a well-rounded society? So we have those 10% of people who have seemingly no fear, but then the other 10% who are afraid of everything.
Right, and somehow it all works together because our species is still here. So
Right.
Thank you, fear.
Yeah. You also talk about sound, dissonance, those in particular, those three notes that, would essentially clash together. And I found that super interesting, especially the example that you use of you walking through the forest and then walking through the forest with, music behind you and what a difference it makes.
Yep.
And you use one example, I don't want to spoil it so when people watch, but use one example that I thought was genius. And what do you think in regards to sound? We have sound all around us all the time. What is it about those dissonant notes that does something to us?
Well, we're still learning a lot, which is kind of scary that we still know so little about fear. But my hypothesis is that dissonant sounds connect to our innate aversion for things that are abnormal and unknown, things that are unnatural. And of course, you have to have lived a bit of your life to have even learned what's normal. So a brand new newborn baby won't necessarily be scared of a dissonant noise, a really loud noise, though, that will frighten them. Anyway, we could probably, if you were, raised only listening to scary music, I don't think it would scare you because it would be normal. It would be, the sounds of the world. And
Right.
if you heard something that most of us consider nice, you'd be like, this is different. I don't understand it. I don't like it. But it wouldn't be very ethical to do that experiment, would
Right.
it? To raise a child listening only to spooky horror music. So that's what makes psychology so fascinating, though. It's not easy to study human behavior because we can't do experiments on ourselves like we can on atoms.
Right. And isolation was another one that you focused on, which I think innately we all, to some degree have a fear of isolation, whether it be, as extreme as being locked in a room by yourself to, a more broader fear that a lot of people have of, I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life or whatever.
Yep.
Is that a human, is that ingrained in us as humans?
Yeah, I think that isolation is a innate aversion, and in the episode we spell out 8 of them after speaking with neuroscientists and psychologists. And isolation is something that in our own DNA we want to avoid. We are a social creature, and all kinds of stuff can connect to isolation. Our brain can connect them to isolation, even if they're not really that life-threatening. So public speaking. If I give a bad speech or embarrass myself on stage, I won't die, but I might embarrass myself. And then what if people don't want to hang out with me and then I'm alone and oh my gosh, being alone can lead to death. And now all of a sudden I'm afraid of public speaking.
Right. Wow.
But it all happens very subconsciously, right? No one literally says, I don't want to go on stage because what if I'm alone for my entire life? You know? But it's all being done by parts of the brain like the amygdala subconsciously.
And what these 8, particularly these 8 innate aversions, if you think about them, and you touch on this in the special, if you think about them, I mean, they really, whether it's us today or whether it was us as cavemen, tens of thousands of years ago. It is, fear of the dark is human, essentially. It is fear of the saber-toothed tiger that we can't see. Or today it might be, fear of the serial killer or whatever that we can't see, the mugger. Can you talk a little bit about those innate aversions as a whole?
Yeah, of course. So, like I said, we found 8 of them, and I believe that it's pretty complete. I'll just tell you the 8. Falling, we've got reflexes against falling from birth. Incapacitation, that means, being tied up. I think claustrophobia, confined spaces all fit in there. Disease, the unknown, sudden movement, isolation, pain, and suffocation, the ceasing of the ability to breathe. Those things we don't like even from birth. And then everything that we connect to them later in life is just a fear.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's pretty huge. You know what I mean?
Yes, I know. It's huge. I think it took millions of years for these innate aversions to develop. But we see them in other animals as well. Whereas fear is this very complex thing. If you're afraid of clowns, your fear of clowns may connect to many different aversions. One is the unknown,
right?
Because the face is hidden. You can't really tell the intentions of something wearing a mask. You might not trust those intentions. And then, clowns move in a weird way. They're unnatural. So there's all kinds of ways to explain why we may be afraid of seemingly innocuous stuff.
Wow. So, Michael, what is the scariest thing to you?
The scariest thing to me in my daily life is incapacitation. I sometimes call it like claustrophobia. For me personally, that is my constant worry that I'm trapped. And I don't know why it's getting worse as I get older. It's not ruining my life, but you asked me for what scares me the most. Sometimes I'll even be driving down a hill and there's a bunch of traffic and I'm like, oh man, what if I'm stuck here forever? That's going to be inconvenient. But
yeah.
So, I think it's important to expose yourself to situations that scare you so that you can learn that they're not actually that bad.
And so having done what is the scariest thing for Minefield, what do you think? Do you think that there is I don't want to say a solution because obviously this isn't an easy fix. As we talked about, a lot of this is, very innate as humans. Is there resources coming more so than we have now? Because it seems like, from what you've been doing, there's a lot of research and a lot of breakthroughs that are happening, particularly in, the last few years. Is help on the way?
Yes, it certainly is. And, I think a big part of that progress is us accepting fear and not being embarrassed to admit it. So things like PTSD are, being researched. And I think in the documentary, we celebrate a lot of the people who are studying that. But you need to be able to admit and not be ashamed to say that you're afraid of something. That is a very human trait. And it's why we are here. When you have too much fear, that's not good, but there are ways to be helped. And I think that's one of the most important messages of the documentary.
Thank you, Michael Stevens. Minefield, What is the Scariest Thing special, a YouTube original, is available right now for free. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. I really, really appreciate it. I really enjoyed our conversation.
I did too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Woohoo! Such a great guy. So there's Michael Stevens, VSauce. You can watch Minefield on YouTube whenever you want, wherever you want, from any device that connects to the internet. I highly recommend you watch Minefield, especially What is the Scariest Thing? Such a great episode. And he's got a ton of great content on there. So check him out. So that is episode 31. I can't thank you guys enough for growing this show each and every single week. It really helps when you review us on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts now, I'm sorry. It really, really does. Tell me what you honestly think so we can continue to make the show better. Keep sharing with your friends. Keep posting it to social media. You guys are incredible. We're doing big things, and it's all because of you. All right. You can find me, Kyle McMahon. I'm at KMacMusic on Instagram and Twitter, at Real Kyle McMahon on Facebook. I will see you next week on Pop Culture Weekly.
You're listening to Pop Culture Weekly with Kyle McMahon, presented by 92.9 Tom FM, an iHeart radio station.
And that's a wrap on episode number 31. Episode number 32. Let's go.